Good morning, everyone. So as Brad said, my name is Sean Hunter. I've been with Turnkey since 2011, so going on the 9 years, coming up very soon, almost 10. Happy to be here. I've been working with Dynamics GP since 2009, ERP since 2007, and I dive into every aspect of report writing with the exception of MR. I can walk the walk in there, but it's not one of the areas that I enjoy doing. I've been presenter at several of the user group summits, North America. Just wrapped up my visit in wonderful Kissimmee, Florida for the user group summit just last week. So hoping to be involved in a lot more as we go down the road. So today, what we're going to be going over, and let's get the agenda up here. So we're going to be discussing where to find the out-of-the-box Excel SmartList favorites. If you didn't know where they're at, I just want to show that off. And then we're going to dive into using a method to create your SmartList favorites out of the box without SmartList Builder. If you're still using SmartList Designer, this will be the method that you can take and use to take your SmartList favorites and convert them into Excel Refreshable reports, because one of the things you'll find is that the out-of-the-box GP Excel Refreshables cover all of the out-of-the-box SmartList favorites, but they don't cover any of the new ones that you may want to create. So we'll be going through that. And then just a little bit on what is SmartList Designer, where is SmartList Designer, how to get started, and then we'll go into a real quick demonstration of, as I said, creating that SmartList favorite in Excel. So let's get started. So where to find the out-of-the-box Excel Refreshables in the system. So in GP, if you go underneath any of the modules in the system, so financial, sales, purchasing, wherever you may end up, over in the upper left-hand corner, you should see an option for Excel reports show up under there. And once you click on that, it'll take just a moment to load up. Everybody takes a little bit of different time, but it should load up, and then it'll give you a list of Excel reports that are available out there in the system. And those should, in essence, match the exact folder structure that you would see if you were to get into your SmartList as well. So you can see in my example there, I've got my customer average days to pay shown in there, and over on the right-hand side in the SmartList, you see the exact same SmartList favorite. So any of those favorites that you see with an asterisk sticking up next to them, those should have a corresponding and related Excel Refreshable report in the system. As I said, you're not going to find any of the ones that you've created yourself or taken and evolved further than the out-of-the-box ones that you started with on day one, but you're going to have the ability to hop in and work with any of the ones that were available out of the box. So you'll see those listed there. It's easy. Once you get to them, you just double-click on them and they run. Now, there is some security that is required to set these up, and the benefit of the Excel Refreshable reports is that they are based upon Windows authentication. So even though we're getting to them through GP here, these are all deployed on a local network drive or a shared network drive in your environment, where users who are not part of GP could be configured in a way to be able to access these reports. So you're saving on licensing by allowing individuals to hop in and work with the Excel Refreshable reports versus tagging them with a full GP user license or a limited user license to go in and start working with the SmartList in the system. So that's the huge benefit of the Excel Refreshable reports that are out there. So as I said, Windows authentication is the default security that's for that. That just means that the user running it is the person that it's authenticating and saying the person that is accessing this has access to these specific data points in the system. I have, and we have presentations available that I've done in the past that go over that level of security. So if you are interested in that information, please don't hesitate to reach out to Brad or myself after the session to let us know if you need more information regarding that. All right, so those are the out-of-the-box ones. So again, you should find those underneath any of the modules that you're in the system. So our next part is, what if you've developed a bunch of SmartList favorites and now you're to the point where your SmartList favorites are you running those for thousands of records, and then you're having to download that information to Excel. It works, but it's slow. It's time-consuming. It's not ideal because every time you download that information, it takes X amount of time to, one, pick up all of the records, and two, download those to Excel. So it's just a time-consuming task. So what I'm going to show now is SmartList Designer. And what we do is we leverage SmartList Designer to be able to create the out-of-the-box alternatives in the system if you're not using SmartList Builder. So if anybody is on the line that has used that is licensed for SmartList Builder from E1 Solutions, this is not for you. but this is for anybody who's worked with SmartList Designer or has SmartList Designer in the system. So SmartList Designer is the out-of-the-box alternative to SmartList Builder. It was included in Dynamics GP 2013 or newer. You'll find SmartList Designer in the upper left-hand corner. So if you just noticed when you upgraded from 2010 to 2013, all of a sudden a couple of new icons displayed up there in the upper left-hand corner, that's when they introduced SmartList Designer to your new build. So you may have just seen those pop up. By default, users do not have security to get to this. If a user is set up as a power user, then they would probably have seen this and been able to work with it. So we find it in the upper left-hand corner just under the new button to be able to work with those. So that's how we would get to SmartList Designer. Now, to create and publish a SmartList favorite to Excel, you have to use a SQL view. So that's the catch here. Whenever we get in, we want to work with the SmartList Designer and deploy any of our new SmartList or a new SmartList favorite to Excel. We have to use what's called a SQL view. So what I'm going to be walking through is just kind of the nomenclature, how that is, what it is, and how it works. But in order to access that publish button that we see in the upper left, upper middle of the screen there, you have to have these things based upon a SQL view. So we're going to walk through that now to see that. So when you're in SmartList Designer, if we scroll down at the bottom left of that database view, you'll see a views section that you can expand, and the best place to start is to expand that and go underneath company. So let's go ahead and hop out of here, and let's go into my Dynamics GP installation. So SmartList Designer, again, you're going to find that in SmartList, upper left-hand corner underneath New. And then once we click on New, that'll take us into SmartList Designer. And where we're going to get started to create our new favorite is down here in the bottom left. So over on the left-hand side, I'm just going to scroll down until I find my Views section. I'm going to expand my company. Now, this takes a moment to run, so I already got this kind of loaded up here since we've got a limited amount of time to work with. But whenever you expand the company section, it will take a second to go through all of the views that are out there in your current database. So just be aware, it will take some time. Just be patient as it goes through. It's about 20, 30 seconds, it seems like, for it to go through. But as we scroll down this list, one thing that I want you to pay attention to is as I'm looking through here, you'll start to see familiar faces as we kind of look through this. So, for example, if I pulled up and put SmartList side by side with my SmartList Designer right now, and we expanded my sales section, and we look underneath some of these folders in here. Now, I do have some custom ones that are up, but for example, the out-of-the-box one, so if you look at your current installation of GP without any custom SmartList set up, you'll see the same naming scheme that a SmartList has, your main SmartList, so customers, customer addresses. Same thing for the financial side. If we go underneath the financial and we see account summary, account transactions, accounts, bank transactions, multidimensional analysis, if I scroll up to the A's in here, I should see those same things. So accounts, account summary, account transactions. So my first trick here, my first step to creating these and getting them where I can publish these to Excel is that I basically have to take the one that I want to work with and recreate it. So that's my step here and my trick to work with is find the one that I want to work with. In this case, I'm going to grab my sales line items. So I'm going to scroll through my list. I'm going to find sales line items from my list. I'm going to expand that down, and I'm just going to pick the columns that I want from there that I normally run in my SmartList. Now, if I wanted to have that up side by side, of course, I can come in here and grab one of those and work with it side by side if I had a specific one. So there's my out-of-the-box one, columns there. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to check the boxes next to the things that I want to show up in here. So these will be the available columns that I'll be able to work with within the SmartList. Customer number, let's scroll down, let's get the customer name. Keep going through here, let's grab our document date. Maybe our requested ship date would be helpful, due date, any of that information that we would find beneficial to this as we look at it. So just kind of scrolling through some more. Let's grab that location code if we want to do warehouse. few of the quantity fields, allocated, canceled, things that are important to me to be able to see, quantity base unit of measure. So just a bunch of the different things that I would want to be able to report off of within this. Quantity order, quantity invoice, quantity back order. And then there's my requested ship date. And that looks good. So after I have my columns defined within this, if I just want to get an idea of what it is that I'm going to be showing in this, I can always hit execute query at the top, and that will show me what I've selected so far, so I can just get an idea of exactly what it is that I'm working with. Everything looks good on there. Give it a list name. So I'm going to call this Excel Sales Line Items. Product, Dynamics GP, and then series. This is where basically the bucket that I want it to show up in. So as I choose my series, which one of these folders do I want the things to show up underneath? So in this case, it makes most sense for it to go to sales, which means that as soon as I say OK to this, it's going to throw it under my folder under sales. So I hit OK. And now we have Excel sales line items show up there. And we also gain access to the publish at the top. So one thing that we'll get from this is now that we've got that Excel report, we need to trim it down and maybe add in the columns or the filters that we want to put on it. So how can we do that? How can we make this match one of our customized favorites that we have down here in the system? So one way that I can work with that is I can go in and I can define those exact same things underneath the sales line items, or take my example that I had from previous instances. So let's do items past the requested ship date, because that's one of the columns that I pulled in. And in this case, we're looking where the requested ship date is less than the current date and so on. So if you noticed, while I was in working with my SmartList favorite here in SmartList Designer, in the Modify window, I'm able to add filters. So this is where we basically can define our filter up front without having to define them in a search. So if we want this to be refreshable, we have to define our filters as we're in this window here. So I'm going to say is less than, and then we could put in and do today. We could set this to, okay, I just want to see all orders, whatever it is. So I have to figure out what that criteria is that I want to search by while I'm in here. So I'm going to say is an order, and let's just go with something simple here. So now if I execute my query at the top, I should only see orders in there. I can add additional filters in here, or if I wanted to see anything that was currently out there that had on ordered, or what quantities were canceled, or any of the other columns that I've added into the list here to be able to filter off of. But the idea is that in order to be able to publish this as an Excel refreshable, I have to make sure that my filters are in place before I send it out. So if we want to do anything for the date or anything along those lines, then I can come in and make those alterations within here as well. So let's do is less than, and we'll see if this will give us any values. Doesn't look like it'll give us anything. So there's a few things that we could do to put those filters on there. Once we define those, we say, okay, that'll take us back to our smart list again. So if we were to create it as is with the filter and run this, and we're ready to publish this, then we can hit publish. So I'm going to click on publish at the top. As soon as I hit publish on this, what it's going to do is it's going to take my Excel report and it's going to deploy it to the same folder that I had selected for it in the beginning. So it's going to say the Excel report has published successfully, and where that published is based upon where I specified within the product/series up here at the top. So in this case, if I go in and I look at my Excel reports underneath the sales tab again, I should see my Excel deployed report now. So just keep that in mind. It depends on where I selected for this to show up, where it's going to drop the Excel report when I hit deploy. And that's all based upon the mapping and everything that was set up originally. So as I scroll down, there's my Excel reports, and it just deployed it to the same directory that all of my other reports get deployed to in the system. So we would see it listed there. and then I can run it. Now, the difference that this makes is that now when I run this directly from the SmartList, I don't have to navigate necessarily over to here to be able to run that Excel report. As soon as I click on Excel at the top here, it runs it from the Excel file. So it ran the Excel file. We see the external data connection message up here, so you do or don't get that. You'll just hit Enable Content, and then it should run that information for you as an Excel refreshable. So at any time, I can come back in here, I can hit refresh, and if you can see for the split second down there, it's refreshing that data. So instead of me having to go back to SmartList, run the SmartList, export it, and pull it up, this report right here is based upon the database. So as soon as I add a new record, as soon as a new order gets keyed in or whatever my criteria is for it, it automatically shows out here. So quite a bit that you can work with off of it. Now, the thing to keep in mind is that this is not a static copy of the Excel report. So if you do want a static copy of the Excel report, a little trick that you can do with this, create a favorite off of the new SmartList that you created. So if you do have a static version of it, or you wanted something for this month or previous month or something along those lines, you can come in and create a new favorite. So I'm going to come in and say, okay, where the requested ship date is between, and I'll do the beginning of the month and the end of the month. I might have something that shows up in here. We'll find out. A few things, okay? So a few things that should be shipping this week in my demo database. And then now if I save this as a favorite, orders shipping this month, and add that favorite or any search criteria. But as soon as I add that as a favorite, any of your favorites now become separated from the normal SmartList that's out there. So as soon as I hit on Excel at the top, it exports as you're used to from the previous one. So you'll see it exporting my rows, and now it comes out as just a static copy. It's no longer attached to that database connection whenever it exports out. So you have that capability to create your favorites, to make static sheets for it based off of new criteria. Obviously, SmartList Designer can be used for a lot of different functions where you could add in and join new tables, new views, custom views, third-party views, anything like that into the SmartList NGP. In order to do the publish, though, it does have to be a SQL view. So any of those you would find underneath, again, that bucket at the bottom left of the options in here under views. And as I said, as I expand this out, it just takes a couple of seconds here for it to work through all of the database elements that are out there to be able to add in those values and to work with them. But to take any of the out-of-the-box SmartList favorites that you're working with, this is one trick that you can use to do it, using SmartList Designer and leveraging that to create your new SmartList that can be deployed as a refreshable to Excel. So we'll give this a second to work through that, and we'll keep going here. Now, the other alternative, you can modify the out-of-the-box Excel reports. The thing to keep in mind is that any of the out-of-the-box Excel reports that you have in the system, you can save new versions of those directly to that directory. And as soon as you save those become available for the general population as long as you save them in that same location that all of the other Excel reports are bolted into. So you completely have that capability to add those in there. So finally loaded up. You can see why I ran that in the first place before we got started so that it didn't take some of the time there. But again, that same nomenclature there for what shows as a SmartList folder shows as the name in the system for the database. So that's one way to be able to take these and manipulate them and work with them and deploy your own SmartList favorites. The benefit of SmartList Designer is there's no limit on the number of filters that you could add to this. So if you ever find yourself running into that wall where you've hit 4 search criteria and you need to add more, this is a great way to be able to go in and add those preset criteria to it that are always there and then open up the search criteria for the things that you're using to inquire on your data. So to add more fields to that existing one that I just created, I would just go back through that list. So once I'm in there and I'm working with that Excel list, if I need to add more to it or I notice that I didn't have everything that I needed, I would just go back into this list and I would add more things to it. So I go back underneath views, I would find any of the additional lines that I wanted to add and add those to my list. So I can continue to build upon this and add things to it. If you wanted to have it structured where you had all of the columns available behind there, similar to the way that the original SmartList works, you could add all of those columns. And this is a little trick to remember, is that you add all of those columns, obviously your SmartList is going to be unusable because there's going to be too many columns for it to run the data across the board. So one thing to do as you define and add all those columns in there to make it available for the users to add in and create their own favorites from, so you don't have to continually go back in and add the columns that were missing in the first place. If you go into administration under SmartList options, and then you scroll through here, you should see your new SmartList that you just created listed. There we go. And if we come underneath this list, you notice all my fields are listed, but if I didn't want those to default on the asterisk version, the out of the box, as soon as you click on it, uncheck those in here and say OK. And what happens is the next time that I get into SmartList, and I go to my Excel sales line items, it took those columns off. But if I go into columns and I click on add, they're here behind the scenes. So if you use those SmartList options in administration, that's the way that you can basically hide any of those columns, especially if you went in and you added the entire data set, but you didn't want them all to be available on the surface right off the bat, because it just clutter things up. They're out there so that, this department can look at what they need to, but this department can look at what they need to. You can do that by hiding those in the administration. Okay. So last bit to look at is as we pull up our SmartList and we're working with it, the excellent thing that comes from these Excel reports in the system is, again, if you take those and you open them and you make them your own. So if we came out and we looked at and wanted to pull in our customer list here, it doesn't necessarily matter which one we grab, but I grabbed one of the data connections which contains all of the columns here. But if we were to take this and save this as to the exact same directory that I was in before, and let me grab one of the ones that I want. Let's do my customer defaults. That's what I meant to get first. So if we grab this and I wanted to make this our own to find maybe a list of customers for a specific one, if I file and save this as something and I save it to that same directory where the other things were saved, so I'm just going to tag this with my initials on it and save. Once I save that to that directory with my initials and I refresh this, that's available to the general population. It doesn't become something that's going to get overwritten if they ever reload the Excel Refreshable reports or anything along those lines. So this is my own. A user could pull it back and save it on their desktop as well. The nice thing about that is now you've got an Excel Refreshable where you could pivot off of it and create all sorts of different data sets and information from that one sheet versus having just the out-of-the-box one. So dive in, get your feet wet, create new things from these. And once you save them, they're available to everyone unless you save them in a directory other than the one that's defined in the setup here. So mine goes to the C drive. Yours is probably a network share or something along those lines. So I appreciate everybody's time. I'm going to go ahead and open the floor to any comments. One thing that I want to show before we move from there is that as you're working with Excel and you're deploying these things to Excel, one little nuance that you'll run into, and I included this in the slides because it's important to know, is as you move and rearrange column structures in the SmartList Favorite and things like that, and you try to export those to Excel, sometimes you'll run into this issue where it basically loses the way that it interprets the date. So if you ever run into that, this is your fix for it. So I included this in here. There is a place in your .ini file, and you feel free to read through this and see how you do it, but you basically add that little bit of code right there, and once you do that, then it fixes that issue. So I included that in here because it was an aggravation that I had as I was trying to work through something. So you basically modify that setting in there, set it in there, and then it starts working again at that point. So only if you run into that issue that you saw previously where the date looks like that. Otherwise, it should come out just fine. All right, so let's go ahead and open the floor to any questions that came through on the line.
Thanks, Sean. So the first question is from Carvel. When I hit new, I get SmartList Builder, not SmartList Designer, different screens.
Congratulations. You are the proud owner of SmartList Builder from E1 Solutions, and you have a better platform to create and work with your Excel reports. The best thing that I can tell you is if you go in underneath the Microsoft Dynamics GP dropdown at the top, so let me hop out of this. And what you'll find is at the top of Dynamics GP, as you scroll through here and you go to Tools, you'll see an option within there for SmartList Builder. So you'll see it under this menu right here for SmartList Builder. And once you get into SmartList Builder, that gives you multiple options for creating Excel reports that are beyond this. So you guys have basically the Cadillac version of creating SmartList. Today's session, what I was showing was for anybody who hasn't purchased the ISV add-on.
Okay. And Pam asks, to help cut back overall access to everything, we changed our power user status. Where can we set up access for the controller and senior accountants to be able to set up these reports when we are not power users any longer to make the auditors happy?
So those are going to be under your security roles in the system. So you'll have to define a security task. So this is administration and then security tasks. And we should have, I think they've got one just out of the box for it if we're lucky. If not, we may have to go down to the bottom level to add one of these in. So I created one, it looks like, from a previous session, but let's go ahead and we'll pull this up and I'll show you the aspects that need to be available. If we can find them. May have to get back to you on the specifics of that because right now I'm not finding my settings. So I'll have to actually, I'll follow back up with you on that. And I can send you out a piece of information for it. But there's security tasks that define that access in the system. And I don't know that I have an out-of-the-box one defined for it, at least in my instance here.
Okay, so Pam will follow up with you on that one. Michael asks, if you have let's see actually. I want to be able to publish some of the SmartLists that I've built through SmartList Builder. If you have SmartList Builder, can you use refreshable Excel reports?
Answer is yes. So if you have SmartList Builder purchased in your environment, And I'll pull up, I've got GP 2018 loaded with this. So let me pull up my version of GP that has SmartList Builder for it, if it'll let me. So up at the top, if you go underneath the Microsoft Dynamics GP drop-down tools, and you should see SmartList Builder. And then as you get to that flyout menu, there's a fantastic place in SmartList Builder to go in and start building your Excel reports. Best trick I can give you for working with those is if you've already got a smart list that you created under SmartList Builder, so any of those custom smart lists that you've created in SmartList Builder, if you take one of those and go up to Options, and underneath the drop-down there's Duplicate. So if you've created a smart list within SmartList Builder and you want to turn that into an Excel report, if you go to Options and Duplicate, you can convert that into an Excel report directly through there. So again, this application right here, this is an ISV add-on that we would be happy to help you guys acquire through E1 Solutions called SmartList Builder. So let us know if you're interested in looking at that further. We're happy to help.
Okay, and then Christy asks, if you change something in the Excel Refreshable report, will it change it in GP?
Like rearranging columns or something along those lines? No, it will not. Do you mean the smart list?
I'm reading that as if you change like something that's in a field, change the value of it, is that going to send that back to GP to update in the system? Or does it just stay in that Excel report?
No, it just stays in that Excel report. There's no update pushback to GP or anything like that. Anytime that you run an Excel report, it's essentially just doing a select of the data out to show it to you, but there's no update or communication back and forth between the database. It's only a report at that point.
Okay. And Laura asks, I am a power user for GP 2015 and have read-only. Is there an additional purchase required to use Excel Designer?
And when you say you're a power user and read-only, is it are you looking for Excel in SmartList Builder, or are you looking for what we were looking at today with SmartList Designer? If it's SmartList Designer, there's no security limitations necessarily to be able to work with the Excel reports. You could pull those out and work with the data sets themselves. SmartList Designer, to get in and work with SmartList Designer, you would have to have a full user license. You wouldn't be able to be a read-only limited user in the system. So you'd have to be set up as a full user, regardless of being set as power user status. For the SmartList Builder side, again, I think you have to be a full GP user to be able to take advantage of that. The limited user isn't going to give you the access you're looking for.